Welcome to the Non-Exec. I'm Justin Levine. It's February 2017. So, you've caught us clearly with a huge amount of things going on in the outside world, Brexit being one of them, Donald Trump being the other, capturing all sorts of attention in the news. And of course, lots of people and businesses are asking, what does the future hold? What's it likely to pan out in terms of these very big events that are happening? Well, I don't know. I'm not a great forecaster in terms of foreseeing what might happen. But what I do know is this: I've got a number of clients asking me these questions, and what I thought I'd share some of the thoughts that are coming out of those discussions. The first thing is, no matter what happens in terms of Trump or so on, is UK manufacturers, technology firms, IT companies, they're going to be competing on a world stage. That is not going to change. Whatever happens, there's still going to be migration of labour, in my personal view. It might be the added value, high-end, knowledgeable people that are moving about, but that is not going to change. So even if we come out of the common sort of area of trading in Europe and we have to abide by World Trade Organization rules, even with tariffs, for example, we're still going to be competing, so nothing's going to change. So the question is, what can we do about it? Well, first thing is, most of my clients are manufacturing companies, technology firms, and so on. And so when I've looked and discussed with them, we've taken sort of examples from history as a clue as to what might happen in the future. So taking manufacturing companies, for example, is 1/3 of all jobs. If you go back to 1800, 1/3 of all jobs that existed in this country, in the UK, were associated with manufacturing. That's 3 out of 10 working in manufacturing. That number is now 1 out of 10. So there's been a substantial shift in terms of the number of people employed in manufacturing. Of course, one could deduce that manufacturing has really sort of diminished over the years, and the answer is that's not necessarily true, because of course it's the nature of the jobs that's changed. Of course, technology, all sorts of things have collided with the world and created this shift in where labour is now deployed on manufacturing. So let me give you some example. In Asia, in the emerging countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and so on, they now employ over 300 million people in manufacturing, whereas in the Western world, we employ 65 million. 65 million over here and 300 million over there. Of course, if you were to say, where's the value added? If you took a product that you buy, you could be a product that you buy in the shops, or it could be an industrial product, where is the value created? Well, 2/3 of that value in that product is created with the 65 million people. Only 1/3 is created overseas. And that's a statistic that's born out of all sorts of research. One day I can share with you another time. So what's happened? Well, the answer is, of course, machine manufacturers, product manufacturers, they've identified the routine parts of what they do. And they've said, listen, let's put those in low-cost countries where labour cost is low. So, for example, let's take the assembly of a product, an iPad, a plane, and the question is where best to place that labour. And very often those go to low-cost countries. And if I took Apple as an example, because it's well publicised, the iPad's made in China, and the assembly cost is about 1.6%, just under 2%, I believe, of the final retail price. So assembly per se is not a high value add when it comes to the product. So the key from history is that a lot of the knowledge that is within the 65 million that resides in the Western region, that is the key to creating value. And of course that value is created in all sorts of different ways, but it's in the design stage, it's in the specification stage, in the test of the product stage. It's very rarely in the actual making of the product or actually the assembly of the product. So the question is, how can we actually go forward and compete as a country? Well, I truly believe the answer is in intellectual property. And it's an Achilles heel of the UK companies, by the way, because if we look at R&D, research and development, over the past sort of 20, 30 years, you're going to find that the UK spends, proportion-wise, as a proportion of GDP, much less than some other countries. So, for example, in the UK, we spend 1.7% of GDP, but in the US, it's 2.5%, and in places like South Korea, it's as much as 4.5% of GDP that they spend in R&D. And of course, that in itself is a key to saying, hang on a second, countries that create prosperity are the ones that spend more on R&D. But it's not the full picture. And it's not the full picture because in the UK, we've got, and you'd be surprised about this, 5.5 million SMEs, small and medium-sized companies. Okay, 4.4 million of those are only one person. So let's just discount them and let's take the 1 million that are left, roughly 1 million companies that employ people. Those employ 4 million people. So 1 million companies employing 4 million people. And if you were to go in those companies, and I'm going to choose manufacturers and technologists, happens to be the ones that I love and know. If you took those companies and you were to say, how much money do you spend on R&D? And I mean research and development. Well, the answer is, and this is based on my personal experience, very little. Very little indeed, because of course those companies, they're relying upon universities, large corporate organisations to make the breakthrough innovations. You very rarely hear of small companies coming up with breakthrough innovations. But let's be clear with each other. It's those breakthrough innovations, whether it's incremental or something radically new, that create enormous prosperity. Because no matter where you are in the world, if you're creating intellectual property, and you're creating something new, it's extremely valuable. And it's not going to be the case in 10 years that UK sits as a little island, people are not going to want to buy that intellectual capital. It's going to be valuable globally. So the key thing from my viewpoint moving forward is for manufacturers and technology companies, but it's going to apply to other segments as well. The key thing is, in my personal belief, is to look very closely at the R&D effort, to look at what is being developed for the future and look at how much is breakthrough technologies. And seeing how, it's a long-term view, and it means sort of taking money out of the budget and spending the money potentially on things that might not have a payoff for 3, 5, 10, 15 years perhaps. But it is the key to actually prospering in the future, and it's one of the key things amongst tax breaks and all sorts of things that the government can help us with. Intellectual property is where it's at. So there you go, shared my little nugget, and maybe somebody might act upon it. So I'm Justin Levine, I'm the non-exec, so thanks for stopping by and see you again soon. Bye now.